Good afternoon, third graders. It's time for another lunchtime reading with our book, The Door in the Wall. And we left off with our main character, Robin, who is 10 years old. And we know that he is unable to walk. Something happened to him. He got some kind of a disease or sickness right after his parents left. And now he can't walk, and he's been in his place of living with not any care really, because the dame who was taking care of him left, and now he's been rescued by a monk called Brother Luke. And Brother Luke is there with him. He is getting ready to take him to St. Mark's, which is where he lives, to help him possibly get better, maybe. And then once the plague eases up, remember the Black Plague is going on, then he will try to contact his father, who was off in the wars fighting. Okay, so we left off with Brother Luke saying it's basically the theme of this book. It's the title of this book. And Brother Luke says to Robin, "Dost remember too the wall about the tower, or any other wall?" Robin nodded. "Have they not all a door somewhere?" "Yes," said Robin. "Always remember that," said the friar. Thou hast only to follow the wall far enough, and there will be a door in it." "I will remember," Robin promised, but he wasn't sure that he knew what Brother Luke meant to say. While he was speaking, the friar had been caring for Robin, easing his tired muscles and making him clean and comfortable. He opened a large chest and found underlinen and hosen, a hood with a long peak, and a warm cloak. "The evening damp creeps up from the Thames," said the friar. The Thames is a famous river that runs through London and through England. And he's saying that it gets cold at night because of that river. Pulling the hosen over Robin's shrunken legs, and though the days are longer now, it is still early in the season. "Good English wool will keep thee warm. Now for the hood." He pulled the hood down over Robin's head and settled it around his shoulders while he held him against his coarse woven monk's frock. Then Brother Luke put his strong arms under Robin, hoisted him onto his back, carrying the bundle of Robin's clothes and the basket in one hand and steadying Robin with the other. Down they went through the great echoing hall, down the winding stair at the other end, past the empty kitchens and out into the courtyard. There stood the little Spanish horse, Jenny, just as Brother Luke had said, patiently waiting. Brother Luke set Robin on the jennet. Now, the jennet is a type of a small horse, and it's appropriate that they call her Jenny. Okay, so he set Robin on the jennet, the robe and blankets around him, making him comfortable. Brother Luke put a strap around Robin's waist, then ran it under the jennet's belly to keep him from falling. He tied the bundle on at the back, and they set forth. Out through the door in the wall of the courtyard, they went into the street. Robin leaning against Brother Luke, and the jennet, remember the jennet is the horse, picking her way sedately over the cobbles. The cobbles are the stones on the ground. There were not many people abroad, for it was the end of the day. Curfew was ringing as they turned up Creed Lane to Ludgate Hill. Curfew is, back then it was like a bell that went off, or chimes of some sort, some kind of noise that said, okay, it's time for everybody to be in their house. That's curfew. Curfew was ringing as they turned up Creed Lane to Ludgate Hill, and only because the guard knew Brother Luke's habit, that is his frock, okay, only because he recognized that, were they allowed to pass through the city gate. By then they were more than halfway to the hospice, but it was nearly dark when they reached St. Mark's and were admitted by the porter at the postern gate. "Will I go back home soon?" asked Robin fearfully, for the gate had clanged shut behind them as if it had been closed forever. Will a message be sent to my father or to my mother? Be comforted, my child, Brother Luke answered. As soon as the plague is somewhat quieted in London, a messenger will be sent to thy father. Meanwhile, we shall care for thee. He lifted Robin and carried him to his own cell and put him on the narrow cot, which is a bed. Now rest, my son, he said. May, the month of May, came in with a burst of bloom in hedge and field. There was hawthorn, both pink and white, and primroses and buttercups carpeted the fields with yellow. In every garden, wallflowers blossomed in bright color and filled the air with perfume. For days, Robin was cared for as if he were a little child. Brother Luke brought him food, kept him washed, and changed his clothes, but he was too much occupied with other things to stay with Robin for a very long time. The bells clamored as loudly as ever, but now the sound was associated with the regular procession of the monks going to devotions. Robin grew to like it. So remember, Robin is at a place called St. Mark's, which is a hospice or a church that takes care of people who have sicknesses or maladies. And it's monks that live there, and probably some nuns as well. Okay, Robin began to sleep well on the hard cot and to feel at home in the little cell. He could see nothing but the sky through the small wind hole, for it was high in the stone wall and only in the early morning allowed a ray of sunshine to come in. Against another wall stood a prayer stool and desk combined with a smaller one beside it. On the wall hung a little cupboard which held Brother Luke's few personal belongings and his breviary. It's actually called a breviary, which I believe is like a book of Psalms or book of prayers. And so that was Brother Luke's, one of his personal possessions right there on the little table. Robin couldn't see into the corridor and at first couldn't identify all the sounds he heard. He liked the shing sound of feet on stone as the monks passed to and fro. Sometimes, when they passed in procession, chanting, he joined in the singing, for most of the plain songs were known to him. Sometimes there were long silences when he heard nothing but the mewing of the cat Millicent or the squeaking of a mouse she had caught. There were hundreds of people within this hospice, but they were separated by thick walls and long passages. The outer court was far away at the other side of the monastery. There, visiting pilgrims, knights at arms, merchants, and minstrels gathered, each awaiting the attention of the prior. The prior is like the superior of the monastery or of the hostel there, of the church. They were all awaiting his attention. Because there were few inns, the monasteries were open for the entertainment of wayfarers, rich and poor alike. Besides that portion reserved for travelers, there was an almonry. Well, it's almonry, I think is how you pronounce it, because it has to do with alms. Alms are gifts to the poor, okay? So there was an almonry overflowing with the poor of London, seeking food and clothing. St. Mark's was a busy place, but most of the activity was far away from Robin. He was much alone, and time seemed long. One day, Brother Luke said, "It is time now to try thee sitting up." He was rubbing Robin's legs, as he did every day, talking the while. "If thy hands are busy, time will pass more quickly. Dost thou like to whittle?" "Of course," answered Robin. "Who does not? But I have naught to whittle," meaning I have nothing to whittle. "I shall find thee a piece of soft pine, which is wood, and will lend thee my knife. 'Tis sharp and of good steel. This bench will fit against thy back to support thee." Brother Luke set the oaken bench at Robin's back and fitted a cushion for his comfort. "Can I make a boat?" asked Robin. Can I make it now?" Brother Luke nodded and left the cell. It seemed long before he returned. Finally, he brought the knife and the piece of pine he had promised. It felt smooth and clean to Robin's hands, and he liked to watch the small white shavings peel off. At first, he scarcely knew where to begin to bring out the shape of a boat. But little by little, it began to round out, and at one end, a point began to appear, as if it had been a prow, which is the front of a boat, if you remember that from Stuart Little. So he was making this little boat out of this pine wood. And he developed the prow, the point at the front part of the boat. "Perhaps I can make it into a sailing boat like the fishermen bring to Balin's gate, or a barge such as the king uses," he said. "Perhaps when it is done, I will be able to walk and can go to the Thames to sail it." "Perhaps," agreed the friar. It was very exciting, but Robin had to stop often to rest. Brother Luke brought soup in, which dark bread was to be sopped. Robin didn't want any of it. He wanted only to go on with his whittling and turned away from the food. "But 'tis made of good mutton, which is sheep, in which bay and marigold have been seethed," Brother Luke coaxed. "Brother Michael grows these fragrant herbs in the garden. Bay is tasty and gives good appetite. Marigold is said to be of value against poor sight and angry words. It is said 'twill draw evil humors out of the head, and the flowers make fair garlands for maidens because of their golden color." What cared Robin for garlands for maidens? What cared he for fragrant herbs? Soppy food he despised. Brother Luke looked patient, said nothing, but continued to hold the food ready, and Robin gave in. He drank the soup and ate the bread dry. Because he had something interesting to do and to think about, Robin found the days passing more quickly. He began to recognize sounds as he had done before, and to associate footsteps and differing gaits, that's the way people walk, with the people to whom they belonged. Now and then, one of the monks would look in on Robin to give him cheer or to say "Av," which is a welcome. So he knew several of the monks by name, and he could tell which of them was passing. Brother Andrew he knew because he dragged one foot a little. Brother Thomas walked very swiftly, heel and toe, whistling tunelessly under his breath as he went by. Brother Paul was a large man, and when he walked through the corridor, the thudding of his feet seemed to shake the walls, heavy as they were. Besides, one of his shoes squeaked. Robin worked steadily at his little boat. He finished the hull, which is the round part of the boat at the bottom, on the 4th day of the 2nd week. So it took him a long time to carve this little boat. "I see this is to be a sailing boat after all, instead of a barge," said Brother Luke. "It is somewhat awry, with the bow aslant from the stern, but it hath an air as if it had been battling the storm." Brother Luke brought small, slender pieces of pine and showed Robin how to smooth them into mast and bowsprit, which are, you need skinny pieces for those, for the mast and the bowsprit. Then found scraps of linen for sails, because we need some sails for the boat, right? Ribbon from a traveler. I'm so sorry. I skipped a sentence and that didn't make sense. He found scraps of linen for sails and pieces of yarn for rigging. He even begged a scrap of silk ribbon from a traveler for Robin to use as a pennant for the masthead. As if the toy boat had belonged to the king's fleet, Robin thought, I'm going to read that again. As if the toy boat had belonged to the king's fleet, Robin thought. So he's thinking that this boat that he's making is looking so good, it belongs to the king's fleet, to the king's ships. Never before had Robin done anything of the kind for himself. Always, one of his father's retainers had made what toys he had. Once, Rolf had made him a hobby horse, and once, Elfred, the Dane, had made him a boat, but it had not seemed so fine as this one. Now he could hardly wait to begin something else. He would like to carve one of those dwarfs, for example, such as those in the roof bosses in his father's house. Brother Luke suggested something easier. "Patience, my son," he said. "It takes great skill to carve figures like that. Why not make a simple cross? 'Twill be fit to hang over thy cot if 'tis well made and smoothly finished. I'll find some pieces of wood and will show thee how to begin." Always, while Brother Luke talked, he rubbed away at Robin's legs, then turned him and smoothed his back. Busy as he was, Brother Luke found time to bring Robin the pieces of wood he had promised. "These I saved from the pruning of the walnut tree that stands by the well," he said. "It is weathered, for it hath lain in sun and rain these many months." "And how shall I fasten the pieces of the cross together?" asked Robin. "Shall I nail it then, or how shall it be done?" "When thou art ready for that, Brother Matthew will show thee," answered the friar. "Now, make it smooth and fine and have it well proportioned, for it will be a keepsake and not a toy like the little boat. That I leave to thy judgment, for 'tis part of the joy in making things." Okay, I think I'm going to stop there, and we'll finish this chapter next week. So far, Brother Luke is giving Robin something to do with his hands, because he knows that if he's busy working with his hands, then time will pass more quickly. So that's where we're leaving off. All right, you guys have a great day at home and a super weekend. I will see you next week.